Don't worry, guys. It's going to trickle down soon. There are certainly some senses, right, that you can say in modern finance that sound less like economic financial analysis and something like a drunk man and what they would mutter outside of a casino at 3 in the morning. And here's one of them. SpaceX is now worth roughly $2 trillion. Canada's GDP is around $2.5 trillion. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at the point in the simulation where Elon Musk's rocket company on paper is worth nearly as much as Canada. Canada, not a lemonade stand, not a regional bank, right? Not some failing streaming service trying to convince you that yet another reboot is content. Canada, a G7 country, a sovereign nation, 40 million people, oil, timber, minerals, water, farmland, universities, cities, banks, hockey, maple syrup, right? A national talent for apologizing even when they are not at fault. And Wall Street looked at all that and said, interesting, you know what? Have you considered rockets and vibes? Now, to be fair, the market cap and GDP are not exactly the same thing. Right? GDP is the annual output, of a country, right? Whereas a market cap is what investors are willing to pay for ownership of a company based on present profits, future dreams, and in many cases, a level of optimism that is usually associated with cults and pyramid-shaped hats. So no, SpaceX is not merely Canada, and Elon Musk cannot wake up tomorrow and just annex Ontario, right? Although, frankly, at a $2 trillion valuation, I'm sure there's some banker somewhere, right, who's looking at this and just licking their lips and saying, you know what? Elon Musk should buy Toronto, right? I mean, like, it's kind of crazy, right? But the comparison still matters because it tells us something about the age that we live in. We live in an age where actual countries with roads, hospitals, police, courts, schools, ports, railways, forests, and human beings can be financially compared to a company whose valuation depends on the idea that it will dominate not merely satellites, not merely rockets, right? Not merely internet infrastructure, but possibly also Mars, artificial intelligence, defense contracts, orbital data centers, and whatever other magic phrase can be inserted into a prospectus before the SEC starts blinking a little bit too rapidly, like, just tweaking out about it all, right? And so, that is absurdity, right? To think that we can conquer all of these things at once and be the best in every single domain. SpaceX is not being valued merely as a business. It is being valued as a theology at this point, right? It is a religion with rocket engines, the religion of Elon Musk, right? The faithful do not ask, what does this company earn? They ask instead, what could this company become if every single assumption goes right, and every single regulator looks away, and every competitor dies, and every launch succeeds, and every government pays, and every customer subscribes, and every dream Elon has had at 2:47 in the morning somehow becomes an addressable market? Right? That is not a valuation. This is fan fiction with a Bloomberg terminal. Right? And yet, you can understand why people buy into this. Right? SpaceX is not some fake company selling a juice cleanse to venture capitalists. It actually does things. Right? It launches rockets. It lands, boosters. It runs Starlink. Right? It's accomplished things that NASA, Boeing, and half the defense industrial bureaucracy looked at with the speed and flexibility of a sleeping walrus. SpaceX is a real company, and it should be worth a lot of money. Right? This is what makes it so frustrating. The absurdity is not that SpaceX is worthless. The absurdity is that the market has taken something impressive, and because it is impressive, immediately launched it into the financial stratosphere. Right? It is almost as if Wall Street cannot simply say this is a great company. Right? No, it must say instead this is a great company, and therefore it should be worth approximately one Canada. That is the disease. Right? There is no moderation. There is no scale. There's no sobriety. Right? The company solves hard problems, and suddenly investors behave like medieval peasants who have seen an eclipse. Surely this is divine. Right? Surely this means Mars colonies. Surely this means $1 trillion margins. Surely this means I should buy at 100 times revenue because the rocket came back down without exploding. And again, I say to you, LOL. Show me a world where that makes any sense whatsoever. I seen a post on Twitter the other day, and it was SpaceX valuation, right? $1.8 trillion. Walmart valuation, $920 billion. SpaceX revenue, $18 billion. Walmart revenue, $713 billion. But yet, for some reason, SpaceX is going to be worth more than Walmart. In what world does that make sense? It doesn't make sense, right? Unless you're just sort of speculating, right? Like some magical wizard person, some sorcerer who just feels like they have the knowledge of the future, when in reality, you do not. You do not have that knowledge, and you never will have that knowledge, right? And again, it's just like the Wolf of Wall Street says, it's a fugazi, it's a fugazi, it's a wazi, it's a woozy. It's not fucking real. You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. And so, with that said, guys, look, is it maybe the exact same metric or whatnot, but the fact, maybe not, right? But the fact that people are comparing this to Canada shows that this is an issue, right? You cannot have a person be worth, let alone a company. We're not even going to talk about the company. You cannot have a person like Elon Musk worth over $1 trillion and be comparing to wealth of entire countries almost, where, and yet we have people in the street starving. We have people who are homeless in this country. We have people who cannot afford healthcare and health insurance. This is insane, right? We are bombing children in foreign countries, and yet we got a trillionaire here, and it's like, dude, like maybe we should, tidy some stuff up before we allow this to happen. I'm not against, necessarily trillionaires in principle, right? Look, if you earn that $1 trillion, that's fine. It's like, but when we got people who don't even have healthcare, it's like maybe you need to be worth like $100 billion and not $1 trillion. I'm sorry. I'm just going to call it the way that it is. And I understand that some of that's tied up in equity, but to me, it doesn't matter. I think that we need to start looking at some solutions here to sort of, mitigate this disease that we have going on here where this wealth divide is so massive. I remember a few years ago, right? Again, I'm old enough to remember back in my day, ladies and gentlemen, back in my day, right? We used to have, it was the 3 richest people in the entire country worth the bottom 50%. They had as much wealth as the bottom 50% of people in the United States of America. In what world is that acceptable? I don't find that acceptable. You think that person really works, 1 billion times harder than you do? Absolutely not. Now I don't know, 1 trillion times harder? No, it's not how it works. But, I could rant all day, and there's always arguments to be had. And yes, do I have all the answers? No, I don't have all the answers. But what I can tell you is what we are doing, and the fact that this is allowed to happen, and the fact that we can literally compare a small company, not a small company, I guess it's a big company, a company like this, like SpaceX, to literally Canada, is an issue. That is a problem, and we need to find some form of remediation for this. And maybe it's not necessarily the company itself here, but I don't know whether it's the delusions of the individuals, but something has to change. I don't know what that is, but we have to break this spell that we are under. And so with that said, ladies and gentlemen, if you did enjoy the video here today, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for some more content. My name's Dr. Ian Phillips. Hopefully you enjoyed my little script today, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.